Good morning. So today we're going to start reviewing for your final exam. Okay. So we're going to start back in August, but the distance is going to be the distance between 2 points. Okay. So the distance is a 1 unit. So the distance would be your x2 minus your x1 squared plus your y2 minus your y1 squared, and then taking the square root of it would be your distance. Your midpoint is actually a point that lies in the middle, okay, of two ordered pairs. Okay, so remember your midpoint would be your x1 plus your x2, all of that divided by 2, and then your y1 plus your y2, all of that divided by 2. So that's your distance and your midpoint. Okay. Angle relationships. Okay. Remember, vertical angles are going to be congruent. Okay. So if I created these two, angles 1 and angle 2 here would be considered vertical angles. So remember, those two things would be equal to each other. Okay. Supplementary angles are when they add together to be 180. Okay. Okay, those would be called supplementary angles. A linear pair is when they are when they are back to back to each other. Okay, in a straight line. So here, this would be considered a linear pair. Okay, remember same thing here, measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2 would add together to be 180. Complementary angles are when they add together to be 90. So when measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2, they would add together to be 90 degrees. Okay, so we need to know those definitions there and to be able to use them. Okay, so remember, parallel lines that are cut by a transversal. N would be considered your transversal, and L and M right there would be your parallel lines. Okay, so remember corresponding angles, so like angle 1 and angle 8 right there would be considered corresponding angles, and that means that they would be equal to each other. Okay, remember measure of angle 1 and then measure of angle 2 would add together to be 180. Okay, also measure of angle 1 and measure of angle 4. Okay, those would also add together to be 180 there. Okay, so 1 and 8 would be considered corresponding angles there. Corresponding. Okay, alternate exterior angles would be like 1 and 6. Alternate exterior angles. Okay, those would be also congruent. Okay, consecutive interior angles would be like angle 4 and angle 8, and those would add, so measure of angle 4 plus measure of angle 8. These would also add together to be 180. Okay, those are considered consecutive interior angles. Alternate interior angles, so they're on the opposite side of the transversal, so angle 3 and angle 8 there. And those would be equal to each other. Okay. Okay, so slope and equation of lines. So remember your slope formula. Your graph is your rise over your run. It's the change in the y values over the change in your x values. So y2. So y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Equations of lines, slope-intercept form would be y equals mx plus b. Would be your slope-intercept form. And then remember your standard form is ax plus by equals c. Okay, parallel lines. So remember, parallel lines are going to have the same slope. Okay, perpendicular lines, they are going to have the negative reciprocal slope. Okay, so they're 90 degrees in there, so they are going to have the negative reciprocal slopes. Let's call that one line 1 and this one line 2. So if you were to multiply slope of line 1 times, if you were to multiply the slope of line 1 times the slope of line 2, they should give you a negative 1. Okay, to determine if they were parallel, perpendicular, or neither. It's the only way that you can determine if lines are parallel, perpendicular, is that if they have the same slope, they're parallel, and the negative reciprocal, then they would be perpendicular. Okay, remember angles in a triangle, all of them, whoops, sorry. I'll call that one B, A, B, C. All the angles in the triangle add together to be, so measure of angle A plus measure of angle B plus measure of angle C add together to be 180. Okay. If you have an equilateral, kind of drew it, but if you have an equilateral triangle, that means two sides are going to be congruent. So that also means that these two angles are going to be congruent. So that means that measure of angle A is going to be equal to measure of angle B. Okay. Remember that in the triangle, the two shortest legs have to be greater than the largest side. Okay, so in a triangle, to be a triangle, let's call this A, let's call this A, B, let's call this one C. So A plus B has to be greater than the largest side. So C was the largest side. So remember, to be a triangle, that is one thing that has to be true. Okay. Perimeter, remember, is all the outside sides added together. So remember, congruent triangles, if they are congruent, then each part of the triangle is also going to be congruent. So if a triangle, let's So say triangle 1 is congruent to triangle 2, then each corresponding part is also going to be congruent. Okay, so let's do this example here. So if triangle J, so J, K, and L, okay, is congruent to M, N, and P, okay, find the measure of angle M. Okay, so if I can find, what do I need to find here? If I want to find measure of angle M, that means I'm looking for measure of angle J there. Well, I need to find, I know that P here is also going to be 63 degrees. Well, all the angles in a triangle add together to be 180, so I need to figure out what N is going to be equal to. Well, that means that K and N are going to be congruent because they are in the same position. Okay, so that would say 9x minus 24 is going to be equal to 5x plus a 4. So that's going to be a 4x is going to be equal to 28. So x here is going to be equal to a 7. So 5 times 7 plus a 4 is going to be 39 degrees. Okay, so then 180 minus 63 plus a 39, okay, is going to give me the measure of angle M, which is going to be what, 78 degrees? Okay, proving that triangles are congruent, remember we have, we did this a long time ago, side, side, side. That means that side, angle, side would be congruent. Angle, side, angle. Okay, angle, angle, side. And then the hypotenuse leg. Okay. Reason sides are congruent. So we have given. That could show given. Definition of a midpoint. And then reflexive, that means that they are the same side. Right, so remember, if we had something, can't really draw, but if I had this here, something like this, that means the reflexive property would just mean that that side right there would be congruent in both of the triangles. Okay, angles are congruent, would mean, of course, given, always, right? You can be given that information. Okay, vertical angles. Corresponding angles. Angle bisector. And then alternate interior. So that's all reasons why angles could be congruent. Okay, so let's go ahead and prove, show that triangles, two triangles would be congruent. Okay, so let's do this one here. So E, whoopsie, sorry. So E is the midpoint of CG and DE. So is the midpoint of CG and DF, I'm sorry. So that means that CE is going to be the same distance as EG. Also, that means that DF and right here, EF is going to be congruent. Okay, so E is the midpoint, so this reason here would be that it was given to us, right? DE is going to be congruent to EF. Okay, that's the definition of a midpoint. Okay, so now that means that these are going to be vertical angles inside of here. So that means that measure of D, E, and C is going to be congruent to F, E, and G because those are vertical angles. And then how did I just now prove that those two things are congruent? Because I have a side angle and a side. Okay? Alright, let's do another one here. Okay. Given that AB is going to be parallel to CD, so these two things are going to be parallel, AB and CD are parallel, and then AD and BC are parallel. Okay, so that would be given to us. Okay, so now that means that this angle, angle BAC, is going to be congruent to DCA by alternate interior angles. Okay, that also means, change my color here, that this angle here, DAC, and angle BCA are also going to be congruent because that's also alternate interior angles. Okay, and AC here is going to be congruent. That means that's the reflexive property because they share that side together. Okay, so angle side angle here would be my reason why these two things are going to be congruent. Okay, similar triangles here. Similar triangles, remember, are similar, okay, in each part, so we can have a ratio. So this ratio DF, okay, over FG here, okay, is going to be equal to EF, okay, over FH. Okay, so 9x minus 13 over 15 is going to be equal to 90 over 27. And now I'm going to cross multiply to solve for x. So 27 times 9x minus 13 is going to be equal to 90 times 15. So 243x minus 351 is equal to 1350. So 243x is equal to 1701. Divide both sides by 243, so x is going to be equal to 7. Okay, so similar triangles are going to have their parts are going to be proportionate. Okay, Pythagorean theorem. Means that you will have a right triangle. Okay, so you have to have a right triangle. Okay, that means that each side squared is going to be equal to the hypotenuse squared. So a squared plus b squared is going to be equal to a c squared. Okay, let's do an example here. Okay, so if I wanted to solve for x, I'm solving for the hypotenuse. So I'm going to say 18 squared plus 13 squared. Remember, your hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle. It's going to be equal to x squared. So 18 squared plus a 13 squared is 4 93. Take the square root of both sides, so x is going to be equal to a decimal, 22.2. Okay. Okay, so trig, you're going to have your right triangle. Okay, then inside here, you'll have your right angle here. I'm going to say x, y, and h. Okay, so remember it's sine, cosine, and tangent. So sine of angle A is going to be the opposite side, which is x over your hypotenuse. Cosine of angle A is the adjacent side, which is going to be your y over your hypotenuse h. And your tangent is your opposite over your adjacent. So if we change our angles, so sine of B, so the side opposite of B is going to be y over h. Cosine of B is going to be x over h. And tangent of B is going to be your opposite y over your x. Okay, so it's all relative to what angle you are looking at. Okay, let's do an example here. Okay, so if I wanted to find my side x here, okay, I know this angle, and I'm looking for the side that is opposite of that angle, and I know my hypotenuse side. So that is sine, so I would say sine of 31 is going to be equal to x over your hypotenuse, which is 15. Okay, make sure your calculator is in degree mode, so then you're going to say 15 times sine of 31. So x is going to be equal to a 7.7. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so I'm looking for the side, I know this angle here, so I'm looking for the side that's opposite of my angle, and I know my adjacent side. So that ratio is going to be tangent, so that's going to be tangent of 48 is equal to your opposite over your adjacent. So we're going to say 7 times tangent of 48. So make sure your calculator is in degree, so x is going to be equal to a 7.8. Okay, so that is the first day of review. There's a lot of stuff that we've got to go back and memorize and remember. So please just work on those worksheets and do the best that you can. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.